My name's Nick Jackson. I am 51 years old, and I was born in Luton, Bedfordshire, about 40 miles north of London in 1961. Like everything else in my life, my formative years were rather complicated. I was born to a white biological mother who got pregnant by a Jamaican. In those days, it was as controversial mixed race unions as same-sex marriages in this day and age. Because single mothers weren't deemed fit to bring up children, especially as she came from a rural background in Gloucestershire, and from what I gather went back home to her parents, tail between her legs, so to speak. I was adopted by my late parents who, because my mother spent most of the 1950s looking after her own mother, was too late in the pre-IVF years to have children of their own. I had a very happy childhood. I went to the local, I shouldn't say local, but it's the all-boys school in Bedford. And after that, I went off to Leicester University, where I studied modern languages. So I suppose it's given me a bit of a kickstart to learn Hebrew, even though Hebrew is a completely different ball game. After that, I came down to London in the mid-1980s, and I've lived all over the place, and now I currently live in southeast London. I'll just backtrack to the mid-1980s. It was like 82, 83, 84 when I was coming out. Now, I don't know if anybody here can remember, but it was quite a difficult period to come out as a gay man, because all the headway which had been made in the UK post-decriminalisation in 1967 took a retrograde step, because at that time AIDS was seen as the gay plague, and there was a heck of a lot of discrimination against gay men. So I suppose, although I'd been brought up in a very, well, I say strict background, I found, like, at that time of life, I was, in my early mid-20s. I suppose, for want of a better word, I rebelled a lot, because there was a lot of opprobrium about gay people generally, and it was very easy. You come down to London, you're young, you're good looking, and it was a bit like, it was a bit like a kid in a sweet shop, really, all the clubs and bars and, what was on offer. The first time I went to the gay club, I felt a bit guilty, because I suppose the atmosphere in those days, like, the entrance was behind, it wasn't visible like they are now. You felt you were doing something illicit and naughty, but I suppose that all added to the fun in some ways. But as I say, it wasn't an easy time coming out, because my late father never knew, because he died in 1985, the same time as I graduated. I told my late mother about 3 years later, 1988, and she came out with the classic sort of, "Oh, well, I wouldn't have thought so because you're not effeminate." And I thought, or "You haven't found the right woman." That was another thing she said. She didn't really approve, but it didn't cause an absolute rift. We just found a way of living. She died in 1996, 10 years after my late father. So we just found a way of coexisting from a distance, I suppose, for want of a better word. I was more a party animal at that time, bit of a hedonist. I don't really do a lot of that now. It's not because I'm too old, because I don't think you should put people on labels, but I suppose, like, come the weekend, I'm quite happy just staying at home or seeing friends. I don't really do a lot of socialising on the gay scene, only if there's something specific to do, because I've been there, done there, and burnt the T-shirt. Anyway, backtracking to 1985, it was terribly exciting coming to London after spending 4 years at university in Leicester. A lot of my friends from university had moved down at the same time, so there was quite a network, which is obviously fragmented, as a lot of my friends have sort of got married and moved out to the sticks to raise their family, but I still keep in touch with some of them. I suppose it was like, it was very exciting sort of running around clubs all weekend, but I say I wouldn't want to do it now. But I sort of settled down for a while in 1999. I wait for it, I shacked up with my ex-partner. We bought a house together, and about 4 years after that we had an amicable separation. We're still very good friends, so I've done the marriage bit, so to speak. I wouldn't say it wasn't for me, but I don't think I'd ever live with anybody again, because I think the older you get, the more crusty you get. Because even at 38, I think there was a bit of something in me that said, if he put the top of the bleach bottle the wrong way, I'd start freaking out. And I think the older you get, the more you get set in your ways. I won't say never, but that's just how I feel about things myself. I suppose it's like, you're always conscious that your relationship was seen as second best. Things have moved on even in the last decade. If anybody's partner died, it was seen in some circles as a pretend relationship. It hasn't really affected me, but I know that in the 90s, when a lot of people were dying of HIV, my ex-partners told me that there used to be these horrendous scenarios whereby the parents would blame the gay friends and the gay friends would blame the homophobic parents, and at the funeral each sort of side was looking daggers at each other. I'm glad we have moved on from that polarisation, and I think the vast majority of people of my age and younger are completely relaxed about it. Would I personally consider marriage? Possibly not, but I think I should have the right to say whether I do or not somebody tell me not somebody dictate whether I can or not. I wouldn't say never. I'm actually a convert to Judaism myself. I found that within the liberal community, they seem terribly, not just about gay stuff and accepting of gay people, they seem terribly on the ball about challenging prejudice about, on terms of race, sexual, as well as sexual orientation.
So if you
I've always thought, the sort of people who are racist tend to be homophobic, and a lot of these prejudices do tend to link one to the other.
Mm.
Well, as I say, I was brought up Church of England. Now, I'd always referred to it as Christianity Light meets the Tory party at prayer, which it very much was. It was like, don't mention the G word, don't mention the JC word, and definitely no sex. That was my own sort of take on it growing up. I suppose, my parents, especially my mother, she was at church every Sunday, so on and so forth. But I think what really turned me off it, not so much the gay stuff, which I think the Church of England's made a complete dog's bollocks of, and they seem to have a sort of vacillating position every day of the week. But I'd always, when I was adopted, one of my late mother's friends, who married a German just after the war, she turned around and said to me, we didn't think you'd fit into the village being a mixed race child. And I thought it was a bit of a cheek, considering that my parents were completely fine about her marrying a German directly after World War II. But then my biological father, who's from Jamaica, people from the Caribbean actually fought on with the Brits against Nazism. I thought it was a bit of a brass neck to turn around to say that. So I'd always associated that sort of Middle England C of E stuff with what I call bourgeois racism, for want of a better word. Like one of my mother's friends, who was actually from quite a frum Orthodox background in North London, she married an Anglican and converted to the Church of England. Now the poor woman had the worst of both worlds, because from what I gather, her family sort of said Kaddish for her because she left the Jewish community. And when she arrived in Bedfordshire, it was like, well, she's not really one of us, she's Jewish, So I'd always associated that sort of small town stuff with, really petty, small-minded prejudice. So I find, what I like about the Judaism, it doesn't try and say we're right and you're wrong.
Which year did you convert to Judaism?
Well, formally, 2012.
And how did you come across liberal Judaism specifically?
I'd be disingenuous if I said it wasn't because it was gay friendly. There again, I wish there was more. If you do a lot of research by Googling, I wish there'd be more material about people who, from non-Jewish backgrounds, who convert because they feel drawn to Judaism. There's a heck of a lot of information about what I call glitzy celebrity Hollywood conversions, but there's very little about people who convert because of a love of Judaism, because it makes sense to them.
Could you tell us more about, in terms of your LGBT identity and your Jewish identity, what were the crossovers there, or how do they influence each other specifically?
How do they influence me? Well, I've got something I'd like to share with you. A couple of things which I think of. In medieval Europe, there used to be in the Catholic churches a representation of the church and the synagogue as an allegory, and the church is seen as good and the synagogue is seen as bad. And I suppose it resonated with me that the divine hand is crowning the church and killing the allegorical figure of the synagogue. And I suppose I can identify that with heterosexual good and gay people bad. Secondly, when I came into the world in 1961, it was anathema for a nice white girl from Gloucestershire to get up the duff, for want of a more elegant expression, by a Jamaican. And there again, this is the old canard about the English rose, or in this case the German rose, being seduced by the dark other. There's like a stereotypical figure of a Jew seducing a blonde German Fraulein. So I think that canard has always gone on, that, you know, in one shape or form. So I could identify with that as well. So yeah.
Have you joined any LGBT Jewish groups?
Oh, I
or
go
have
to
you been
Gay Jews
active?
in London events occasionally, yes. Yeah. It's all very it's a good laugh. I feel quite old there because the average age is about 30. They're all nice guys from North London. You know, we have a good laugh and a few drinks, but yes, it's good fun. I actually visited Auschwitz in 2001 when my ex-partner and I did a dual city break to Budapest and Krakow. It was a very harrowing experience. I deemed it appropriate to take that. There was people snapping away in the gas chambers and glass cases of glasses and hair, but I didn't think it was appropriate to take pictures of that because, just from my own personal thing, I don't think it was, it was too horrendous for me to actually, this even before I thought of converting, but I just thought it was too horrendous. I didn't want to take pictures. So that's just a few sort of bits and bobs about my life I've got loads, which reminds me, I've got a whole crate full of photos at home, which I'm trying to, when I get round to it, I want to scan them all digitally, because as well as my own stuff going back to the 70s and 80s, I've inherited a lot of old stuff from my late mother, and I keep saying I've got to put them on, disc or digital vaults, but I never get time to do it, so maybe this will prompt me to do it someday.
Nick, is there anything you'd like to add as in terms of Rainbow Jews, LGBT Jewish history, any personal experience or reflection?
Well, yes, only that I'd say that, there's so much negativity in current society about various religious groups, mostly Christian and Muslim actually, that it's quite refreshing that, people within the Jewish community I've come across are so positive about same-sex marriage and acceptance of other faiths, because Judaism doesn't see itself as the only way, but whereas unfortunately the two daughter religions do, but I suppose, anything negative to do with religion sells papers, whereas anything positive doesn't, unfortunately. That's the world we live in, isn't it? Thanks.
Thank you, Nick.